If you follow my channel regularly, I thank you very much for that. Normally, this is a woodworking channel. This week, I will not be posting a wood turning video as my time has been consumed with getting my sailboat ready for the fall. One of the things that I've had to do as a result of that is I'm going to pull my engine. And this video is going to concentrate on what was involved in doing that task. So if you're interested in only wood turning videos, please come back next week. But if you are looking for an engine removal video, then you're in the right spot. But I'd also encourage you to check out some of my wood turning videos as well. Thank you. I also want to apologize for the video quality, a rookie mistake on my part. As I was recording the footage for this video, I actually had my camera in landscape mode rather than portrait. And I tried editing the video and flipping it around, but it cut too much off. So I do apologize for that. You are going to see this video in portrait mode. Thank you. So I don't normally do videos on this topic, but I have to remove the engine on my sailboat. I have a 32-foot sailboat with a Yanmar 2GMF engine. When I went online, I couldn't find a lot of information on how to pull the engine. So I'm going to violate one of the things that I try not to do, and that is create a video when I've only done it one time. So I'm no expert by any means, but I also didn't see any information out there, or very little. So after talking to a lot of people, picking a lot of brains, I'm going to share my experience and how that went. So we're going to go ahead. First thing we're going to do is disconnect the water lines, disconnect the electrical back there, the fuel line, disconnect that, and the transmission itself so that we're ready to go. Then we'll remove the engine mounts, not remove the engine mounts, but remove the bolt that's holding the engine on the engine mounts. I'm going to leave the engine mounts where they are. That way I don't have to do any lineup in the spring. I'll just be able to set it back on the existing one so they will not move. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll get started. Failed to mention why I'm doing this. So the reason I'm pulling my engine is because of this. I have a little bit of oil leaks, nothing major. I don't generally have to top up my oil through the season, but just enough to keep my bilge dirty. On the bottom of my oil pan, there's a gasket and it's leaking, as well as this front gasket right here is leaking as well. So I've ordered in a gasket kit, which includes all the gaskets, the oil pan, the front cover, and the head gasket. So I'm going to replace all of those, and that's the reason why I'm taking the engine out. The oil pan, although it is off the ground, has got a number of bolts on it, and you cannot access it in place. You've got to pull the engine in order to do it. So that's the reason why I'm doing it. So I'll give regular updates, but probably not every step. So far, I've disconnected the water cooling line that comes in here. I also disconnected the fuel line, and I found a problem. This fuel line, and I've been suspecting that this is a diesel supply. I've been suspecting I've had a slight diesel leak. When I went to take this off, I never even had to loosen the worm clamp. It pulled right off. So obviously that was loose and was probably, or could be, one of the sources of my diesel fuel leak. So I'll keep that in mind when I go to reinstall things. I've also drained the oil. I am going to be taking things apart, so the more oil I can get out of it now, the better. So I've drained everything. So now I'll go ahead and continue and remove the electrical, which is these connections back here. I'll remove those. And that's it for soft connections. And then I'll start on the transmission. So here's a view from the back of the engine. I've already disconnected everything I can from the front. I disconnected these hoses here, which feed into my hot water tank. And the radiator overflow, I've disconnected that. Now I've got my electrical connections down there and my exhaust connections up here. Excuse me. And then the actual drive coming out of the transmission, the coupling there. I'll disconnect that and I'll leave all of this here, but that will disconnect it from the engine and then I should be able to pull it ahead. So I'm actually removing the transmission along with the engine. That way I won't open that up at this point and have to drain any fluids out of there. For the water cooling, I just shut off the through hole so that when I disconnected this hose on the other side, no more water would come in. I don't need to disconnect this any further. I've disconnected it at the other end after the water strainer where it goes right into the engine. So no need to remove it here from the from the through hole. Okay, the more I work on this, the more I realize the skill set required to do this is a contortionist. I got the coupling split here between the transmission and the prop, so it's disconnected. It took quite a while, and of course the bolts were seized. So not easy to get to them all, but it's off now. All that's left now is the battery connection, the exhaust hose, and the transmission cable. Okay, change in plans. The motor is disconnected. I'm off the motor mounts on the front, still on the back. Plan now is to put the ratchet straps there on the motor mounts, tabs, use those as lifting lugs, attach the gin pole, which is a crane, to it to lift up, and as we do, we'll slide it up on these 2x4 rails here so that we can get it on the pallet. We'll have to turn it as we do it, put it on this pallet, then lift it, turn it, and then up through the companionway. So hopefully that'll work. We're all disconnected now. There's one wire on the back of the alternator which I couldn't reach, but I'm going to be able to pull it forward enough to be able to get to it, and then we'll disconnect. So another change of plans. As you can see here, we did not use the pallet at all. We just put the ratchet strap hooks directly into the brackets that go on to the motor mounts. This worked fine. There's four, one on each corner, so the engine was balanced fairly well. And the engine only weighs about 125 pounds, so it was not a difficult lift. We were able to manipulate it quite easily. And from there, we just used the crane to put it directly into the back of a truck. We did set it on the pallet once we got it to that point and transported it on the pallet, but the pallet was not involved in the lift. So here's the engine in my garage, and I'll leave it here for the winter and do some work on it over the winter. As I mentioned, I've got the seals on the oil pan to replace, seals behind the front cover, and I believe there's a back cover as well, along with the head gasket. I'm not going to replace the seal in the head gasket, although I will be taking it into the shop to do a valve adjustment, and when they do the valve adjustment, they'll replace the head gasket. Other than that, it'll be ready to go back into the boat in the spring, and hopefully that will go as smoothly or smoother than the removal. As I mentioned, I did this video because there wasn't a lot of resources available online for this job. Hopefully this is helpful, and for those that are interested, next week there'll be a wood turning video on this channel.